Hungarian Folk Tales. The Simple Prince. Once upon a time there was a farmer, and the farmer had 3 sons. One of his sons was very simple, and he was the youngest. One day the farmer went into the farmyard and saw that someone had scattered the straw all over the place. So he busied himself and tidied everything up. Then the farmer told his sons, "This can't go on. Someone has to keep the straw in order." On the first night, the eldest son went out to the yard to watch the straw. But the boy became hungry and began to eat. All of a sudden, a tiny mouse appeared and sat staring at the boy. So the boy took off his hat and trapped the mouse, but the mouse vanished. Then the oldest son felt drowsy and he fell fast asleep. And when he woke the following day, he saw that the straw had been thrown around the yard again. The following evening, the middle son went out to guard the straw in the farmyard. He was eating his supper when the mouse appeared. He also tried to catch the mouse with his hat, but the mouse vanished. So the boy went to sleep. And when he woke again the following morning, the straw was messy again. On the third day, it was the youngest son who went to the yard. His elder brothers teased him and insisted that he was too stupid to guard the straw. But young John still went out and sat in the yard. The little mouse appeared and stared at the boy. Then young John saw the mouse and gave it a bite to eat. The little mouse said to him, "Young John, if you are clever and do as I say, the straw will be neat and tidy by morning." A horse comes into the farmyard at night and it kicks the straw around. But you mustn't be afraid. I will give you a bridle and you must throw it around the horse's neck and sit up on its back. So young John did as the mouse had said. When the horse appeared that night, he threw the bridle around its neck and sat high up on its back. The horse tried to run into the straw, but young John held it tight. The horse soon realised that young John was too strong for it and it would never get into the straw. And then all of a sudden, the horse began to speak. "As you were so brave, I shall give you 3 whistles. If you blow one of them, a horse will appear in the blink of an eye with a uniform for you to wear." Then the horse gave him a copper whistle, a silver whistle, and a golden whistle. When he returned home, young John said to his father, "I kept the straw safe, it's still neat and tidy." So then the father addressed his other 2 sons. "You see, you said he was the simplest of you all, and yet he was the only one who managed to guard the straw." The king's beautiful daughter had made up her mind to marry, and she set the following challenge. In front of the castle stood a mighty glass mountain, and on top of that a solitary pine. And on the highest branch there was a slipper that perfectly fit the princess's foot. And the young princess announced that she would marry the man who could bring the slipper back to her. Brave young men from all 4 corners of the land came to try their hand, and young John's brothers went up to the palace to see who would get the slipper. John wanted to join them too, but they refused to take him. Then John had an idea. "You go, my brothers, I shall be there anyway." Then young John blew the copper whistle and a copper horse appeared with a gleaming copper uniform. John put the clothes on, climbed up on the horse and rode towards the glass mountain. When the princess saw him, she sighed and said, "I wish it were him who could pick up my slipper," but he only rode halfway up and back down again. When his brothers got home, they told him what they had seen. "I saw it too, from the top of the wall." His brothers were angry with him and they knocked the wall down to stop him spying on them. The competition continued the following day and his brothers attended again. This time John blew his silver whistle. This time a silver horse appeared with a sparkling silver suit, and when he rode up in front of the palace, the princess was even keener for him to win. But young John only managed to ride halfway up and down again. At home, his brothers told him what they had seen. John said, "I saw it too, from the barn roof." And his jealous brothers burned the old barn down. On the third day, his brothers went again to see the competition. Now John blew the golden whistle, and a golden horse appeared with a glistening golden uniform. The young princess saw him at once. "This is the last day," said the princess. "I hope he will bring my slipper back." John rode all the way up to the top. He picked up the slipper and disappeared over the other side of the mountain, taking the golden slipper with him. The princess was sad because she had no idea where the handsome hussar had gone. Young John returned home. Then his brothers arrived back and told of what they had seen. They said they had seen a brave hussar, better still than the two before, who had ridden up to the top of the glass mountain, picked up the golden slipper and vanished down the other side. And they said the princess looked sad. Then young John said, "I saw everything too from the corner of the house." His brothers were so furious that they knocked the old house down. The king issued a decree that the young man possessing the golden slipper should present himself at the palace at once. But nobody came. Then they began to search the homes of the local people, and they also searched young John's house. "Is there anyone else living here?" they asked the two brothers. "There is another boy, but he is no more than a simple fool." "That is no matter," they said. "We want to see him too." Young John had a little bag that he always carried wherever he went. They searched the bag and found the golden slipper. His brothers were stunned by the sight and they had no idea how he had come to have the princess's slipper. Then they were ordered to take young John to the palace where he was to marry the pretty princess. The king's men asked John where was the suit he was wearing when he picked up the slipper. Then young John blew all three whistles and all three horses appeared with all three suits. Then young John put on the golden uniform and gave the other two to his brothers. Then he presented the slipper to the princess and the wedding festivities began. The wedding party was so very jolly that I think they may still be making merry to this very day. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Two Princes with Hair of Gold. Once upon a time there was a young prince who left his home looking for a bride. He was riding through a village when three girls watched him pass. The eldest girl said, "If that prince married me, I would make him wear a linen shirt." That was a joke, of course. The middle girl said, "I would make him sleep on a sack of straw." And the youngest girl said, "Well, if he married me, I would give him 2 sons with hair of gold." The prince's coachman overheard all of this and he told his master. So the prince said, "Go and get the girl who said she would give me 2 boys with hair of gold." The coachman called the girl over and the prince told her to join him in his royal carriage. Time quickly passed, and the young queen became heavy with child, but before she could give birth, the king had to go and fight. There was an old witch in the court who had teeth of iron, and she had a daughter. She would have liked the king to have married her daughter, but when he married another, she hated the young queen very much. When the king went off to war, she said to herself, "Just wait, queen, you will pay for all of this." The day came when the queen gave birth to 2 beautiful sons with hair of gold. The witch with the iron teeth stole them and put 2 puppies in their place. Then she buried the 2 boys opposite each other in the ground around the fish pond. The king was told the news that the queen had given birth to 2 puppies, and he had also lost the battle that day. This and the bad news about his wife made him very angry. He wrote a letter and sent it home. In the letter, he ordered that the queen and the 2 puppies should be thrown into the pond where a great whale lived. As soon as the messenger was sent away, he began to regret what he had ordered to be done. When the king arrived home from the battle, he married the witch's daughter. 2 trees bearing golden pears grew on the spot where the 2 princes with hair of gold were buried, and the king liked nothing better than to sit in their shade. The witch did not like this and told her daughter to tell the king to cut the pear trees down, and she nagged him until he had both trees cut down. From their wood 2 beds were made, one for the king and one for the queen. The witch ordered the splinters, twigs and branches to be burned. But no one noticed a passing goat that gobbled up 2 small twigs from the tree. When the queen and king were sleeping in their beds one night, the queen's bed asked the other, "Dear brother, is that weight not too heavy for you?" And the other bed answered, "It's not heavy at all, as my burden is my dear father. But mine's too heavy, as I have to bear my enemy." The witch was not asleep, and she overheard the beds talking. The next morning she ordered her daughter to burn the 2 beds, lest her sin come to light. The 2 beds were burned that very day. The witch with the iron teeth and her daughter were now convinced that they faced no more threats. But then the goat gave birth to 2 kids. The 2 little kids had hair of gold. The witch was shocked when she learned of this. She told her daughter to ask the king to have the 2 kids killed, and she could only recover if she ate their meat. The goat kids were killed, and the witch ordered that every strand of their golden hair should be cleared away. But as the kids' innards were washed in the stream, 2 little pieces turned into 2 goldfish. The 2 fish grew and grew until they were caught by a fisherman one day. He pulled the net to shore, and his joy turned to shock when he saw the 2 goldfish turn into 2 handsome young men with hair of gold. The 2 princes had been buried 17 years before, and so now the 2 young men were 17. They duly thanked the fisherman for catching them and asked him to take them to the king, as they knew a fine poem they wanted to recite for him. They knew they would be rewarded for their performance, and they promised to give this reward to the fisherman for his troubles. The fisherman shook all over with fear, but he agreed to take the 2 young men in the hope that he would receive a rich reward. The young men were announced to the king, and the king gave the order to let them in. The witch with the iron teeth saw what would happen, and she tried her best to keep them out. But the king eventually met the 2 youths in spite of all her tricks, and she tried to follow them in and convince the king not to believe the 2 young men. But the king resisted, saying, "Don't meddle, mother-in-law. This is my business and not yours." the two young men recited a poem to the king, and in that poem they told him their mother's story and their own. They told the king that the whale had swallowed their mother alive and that she was still alive inside the whale's belly. They told the king to catch the whale and they would recover their mother. They also asked the king to richly reward the fisherman for his good deed. The witch with the iron teeth constantly tried to interrupt the youths and did all she could to make the king disbelieve them. But the king paid all his attention to the two young men. The first thing the king did was to order that the whale be caught. The queen emerged from the whale alive and the king begged her to forgive him. She had survived the ordeal intact. Then the king ordered his two sons and wife and the witch and her daughter to appear before the royal council. The king put the question to the council. What does a witch deserve who tried to kill two boys and their dear mother, ruin their reputation and deprive a father of his family? What should her punishment be? So the royal council ordered that the witch and her daughter should be tied to the tails of two horses and dragged through the city. Then they had to be chopped into four and their bodies nailed to the four corners of the city. The queen and her two sons begged for mercy for both of them, but to no avail, and the sentence was duly carried out. The king gave a rich reward to the fishermen. There was a fabulous feast, and the people of the land and the royal family lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Starry-Eyed Shepherd. Once upon a time, there lived a poor man. He had only one son and a wife. One day his son said, "Father, I'm going to leave home and seek my fortune." "Son, be sure to take the path where there's no mud." Then his parents gave the boy a bundle of food and bid him farewell. The boy walked and walked. He walked his way across 7 lands. He did not stop until he arrived at a lush green meadow, where he saw a flock of sheep grazing unattended. "Those poor sheep have been left all alone. I shall watch over them until their shepherd returns." The time passed, but no shepherd appeared. The boy stayed with the sheep until he ran out of food. He thought he would take the sheep down to the local town, where he would sell a few of them to buy some food for himself. The boy walked down into the town and sold a handful of lambs to the local butcher. He then used the money to purchase all that he needed and settled down with his sheep at the edge of the town. A king also lived in this town, and he was a very cruel king indeed. He was so very cruel that he had people executed for not saying "bless you" whenever he happened to sneeze. One Sunday morning, the king sneezed unusually loudly, and so all of his soldiers rode all over the country to order the common people to say, "Bless you, your highness, your very good health." The young shepherd was still out in the meadow watching over his flock when the soldiers rode up to him and ordered him to bless the king, but he refused to obey until the king granted him the hand of his beautiful daughter. So the soldiers carted the shepherd boy off to the palace and presented him to the king. The king's beautiful daughter was also there when they arrived, and she liked the young shepherd, but said nothing of it to anyone. Then the king addressed the shepherd, saying, "Will you not bless me, your king, and wish me good health?" "I will not, your highness, even if you have me killed, though I happily would if you let me marry your beautiful daughter." "A lowly shepherd boy like you will never marry my beautiful daughter." Then he ordered his soldiers to throw the shepherd boy to the hungry wild pigs. There the shepherd boy took out his flute and played a merry tune to the fat pigs. And the pigs liked the music so much that they began to dance. The shepherd made them dance until the pigs began to sweat and were all so tired that they fell fast asleep. Then the starry-eyed shepherd felt tired too and laid his head down for the night. In the morning, the marshal went to see if the boy was still alive, and when he saw that he was, he took him before the king again. "Now, young shepherd, wish that God should bless me and give me good health." "I will not, your majesty, not until you grant me your daughter's hand, not even if you throw me into the pit." "Guards, throw him into the pit with the scythe blades." "Oh, that's no joke. If I'm cast down into the pit," the shepherd thought, "the blades will cut me to shreds." The soldiers asked the shepherd again, "Well, will you now ask that God bless the king and wish him good health?" "Wait 1 minute, my good men. Leave me alone for a moment while I think." So the soldiers left the starry-eyed shepherd alone. The young shepherd stuck his crook into the ground, took off his coat, and then put his hat on top of the crook. He shouted to the soldiers, "Now you can come in and do with me what you will, for I shall never wish that God bless the king and give him good health." Then he swiftly hid himself in a dark corner. The soldiers were sure that the crook, the coat, and the hat were the shepherd boy, so they threw them into the pit. The candle down in the pit went out, and so they thought that the poor shepherd had landed on it and died. The very next morning, the marshal went out to check the pit. He heard a pretty tune playing on a flute inside. What on earth can this mean? It's impossible that the shepherd is playing his flute. So he opened the door of the house and saw the shepherd there merrily blowing his flute. He locked the door on the shepherd and ran back to the king. "Your Royal Highness, the starry-eyed shepherd is still alive." "Bring him before me at once," the king demanded. The shepherd was again presented, and the king again told him, "Ask that God bless me and wish me good health." "I will never do such a thing until I can marry your daughter, even if you have me thrown to the owls." "Take him to the tower. He will soon beg God to bless me and wish me good health when the hungry owls peck out his starry eyes." So they took the shepherd boy to a chamber in the tower. But as soon as the door was closed, he took out his flute and began to play, and a miraculous thing happened. All the animals in the tower began to dance to his merry tune. The animals screeched and shrieked, and the young shepherd made them dance until they were all tired out. Then they all pulled themselves away and fell fast asleep. Then the shepherd joined them and slept until morning. The next morning, the marshal went up to the tower. He opened the door to see the boy sitting and laughing to his heart's content. The king's marshal ran quickly back to his master. "Your Highness, the shepherd is laughing as happily as if he owned the whole land." "What a tough boy he is. He cannot be killed. Bring him here at once." "It is true that you cannot be killed. Now sit in the golden carriage." So the shepherd boy sat in the golden carriage, and they drove deep into the silver forest. Then the king asked, Tell me, shepherd, if I gave you this splendid silver forest, would you ask that God bless me and wish me good health? No, your royal highness, I would not. It's not the silver forest that I long for, but your daughter. Then they drove further still until they came to a golden pond where all the fish and water creatures were made of the purest gold. Then the king asked once more, if I gave you this pond, would you ask that God bless me and wish me good health? No, never, your royal highness. Then let's drive on. They soon arrived at a wonderful white wall made of marble, and within the limits of the wall stood a palace studded with sparkling diamonds. It truly was a beautiful sight. Now, shepherd, ask that God bless me and wish me very good health. I will not, your royal highness, until I can marry your daughter. What a terrible fellow you are! And as nothing else could be done, the king let it be known that his daughter would marry the Starry-Eyed Shepherd, and the wedding would be in 2 days' time. He warmly welcomed all his subjects to the feast and offered a banquet of good food and fine wine, and all the men in the kingdom attended, along with their wives, who all ate and drank to their heart's content. The tables were piled high with delicious dishes, including hot horseradish that made the old king sneeze. Then the shepherd began to say, "May God bless you, sire, and give you good health. May God bless you, sire, and give you good health. May God bless you, sire, and give you good health." And he said it over and over until the king interrupted. "Stop telling me that, son-in-law. If you stop saying it, I will grant you all I have, my country and my kingdom too." Then the king gave all he possessed to the Starry-Eyed Shepherd, whose poor parents moved to the palace, and they all lived happily ever after.